Today is a snowy day, and I'm here with someone that works for a great organization. Could you please talk a little bit about NCBI, what that stands for, what you do?
Yeah, sure. So NCBI is the National Coalition Building Institute, and we're a leadership development organization that really focuses on empowering people to go out into their community to create change.
That's great. And I met you because one of your interests is helping youth, queer youth. Could you talk a little bit about precisely what you do?
What I do? Okay, so I run after-school programs in elementary and middle schools where we start to break down kind of some of the isms, and oftentimes during sexism or our week on homophobia, young people start to come out to us. And from that we started building really strong relationships with young people across the community here in Missoula, and they started telling us these stories about being in their GSAs in high school and how oftentimes it wasn't really the safest space because there was an educator there or other students were isolating them. So we really founded this group called Youth Forward, which is just a queer youth group ages 13 to 19 where they just can kind of come and have a safe space off of campus to hang out.
And I think that's really amazing, 13-year-olds that you are helping. How is it a really different experience there in that young age group? Like, is it tricky working with parents and schools?
I definitely think it is because around 13, schools are kind of accustomed somewhat to body changes and a lot of issues coming up. But I think that technology really is the play. It's not so much the age. There's this great wealth of knowledge that's super accessible to young people now. And so instead of coming out and being like, I think I'm bi, which I felt like when I was younger was kind of like the safety play of like every person who came out as like any gender variance or sexual orientation. And now young people are like coming out like in their classes like, I think that I am transgendered and this is my name and this is my preferred gender pronoun and let's go.
So it's less, you're saying when we were younger it was more like maybe I'm this, I think, but I'm going to play it safe, and then nowadays kids are finding information and they're just like saying it how it is.
Yeah, and there's a sense of community on the internet. I mean, they can hop in and find support groups or information or other people's stories, and so it's really been this great experience of transitioning like with youth and growing into more the mentorship role and watching them like come out fully empowered, which I definitely did not have.
Well, this is the really interesting part, the personal aspect. What really brought you to this work?
What brought me to this work? Okay. So I grew up in Helena, Montana, just over the hill from here. And when I was in high school, I think times got really hard for me, and I had a really hard time like figuring out where I fit into the world, and I had never really been like super feminine, which my mom is like a super tomboy, so I just kind of figured that I was a tomboy. But as I started getting older and everyone was like started dating, I definitely I think I was a late bloomer too in that aspect, which probably threw me off because I was like, I don't have any interest in dating people. But as I started to, I was like, wow, that dude's pretty hot, and I was like, that lady's hot. Oh crap.
Like, what?
I was like, everybody's so attractive, and then I was like, maybe I'm just hypersexual, and then I was like, no, I think I just love everybody. And so things got really rocky in my high school with like a lot of violence. And so I started working with the Montana Human Rights Network and the ACLU, kind of like volunteering and telling like my story and other people's stories from my school experience. And my friend came out in our school paper, and our high school principal like called in the paper supervisor, I don't know what the teacher's name was that oversaw that, and tried to force them to out my best friend. And they refused to, and sad story, like later the next year their contract wasn't renewed. Who knows if that's what it has to do with, but back when you're in high school, like everything's a conspiracy. And so that kind of was like the climate in my school. It was like she kind of like was trying to bully everyone to figure out who are these gay students. There's no gay students at our school. Like these are not the stories that are happening. But it was. I mean, somebody had the word fag spray painted on their car. Car windows were broken out. And so we started, that's when I kind of got passionate about it and got like the spark of like social change, because I was like, we met with our principal eventually, like when my friend came forward and talked to her about it, and she was just like, well, there's nothing we can do to make our school safer. Because our policy, doesn't include sexual orientation or gender identity. And so I
You
don't know.
knew that
Yeah.
things needed to change.
Yeah. So I got really, 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 really pissed
Yeah.
and just started working at it. And eventually, I mean, Helena was the first school to adopt a policy, but policies don't always create the institutional change
Yeah, so
that needs to happen.
and that's what you're kind of going towards: institutional changes, systematic changes, the big stuff.
Yeah.
And there are things that people can do, directions career-wise that people can go, and
Yep.
you're still working on it, and that
Yeah.
is great.
Yeah.
Big time helper.